Hello and welcome to this recap of day 20 in the Karen Reed case. And as promised, let's start with a prayer. Lally, who stands before us, may you not waste the court's time nor bore this jury. Blessed be your hair so bright. Guide us with your honest light. Let confusion fade away and misstatements have no sway. State your evidence clear as day. With wisdom, grace, and care, lead us fairly everywhere. That was a prayer I was thinking a lot about yesterday because just like the day before, again yesterday it was confirmed Lally apparently has a big problem with misstating what his evidence showed during the grand jury testimony, during the pre-trial hearings. We continued with the young lady with the silver hair, who was the one doing the glass analysis, the one who reconstructed the tail light. Doing that, we found out that, again, I can go back to this physics doesn't work in Canton because the bigger the pieces they found, the longer the time from the incident they were found, which to me boggles my mind. Because how do you find something 6 inches long, weeks, 3 weeks on the dot after the incident, after you had the initial search with snowblowers, you have the search team going around digging up the entire front yard. You had Chief Berkovich find pieces. You yourself, Mr. Proctor, found more pieces. But it took you 3 weeks to find a 6-inch long piece of plastic. I will find that highly suspicious. But again, logic and physics doesn't work in Canton. So that's totally normal that you'll find bigger and bigger pieces the longer you get from the initial searches. But they reconstructed almost the entire tail light, except the clear reverse plastic thingy light in the top left corner. They didn't find any of that. They found all the rest of the tail light. She wasn't asked how it broke, if she could see where the point of impact, which I would think when you reconstruct it, can't you just take it and say, okay, this will be the initial impact and this is how it shattered? Still, no evidence to how that tail light shattered and how John's body caused it, which is weird. The next witness was another technician talking about the glass, the famous glass embedded in the bumper from the cocktail glass, which, if you go back and watch the video I did 2 days ago, Lally clearly states in his pre-trial hearing that they have cocktail glass embedded in the bumper. We found out Monday it wasn't embedded, it was lying on top. And now we found out yesterday it wasn't cocktail glass. They had 3 different types of glass on the scene found and in or on or around the car. None of the cocktail glass was found on the car. He clearly stated that in his opening statements. The piece of glass found on the car didn't match anything else than the last piece Proctor brought in. Again, going back to Proctor, remember that name. So you have pieces of cocktail glass. We know there's a broken bottom of a tumbler found under John's body, according to the EMTs. And last year, we've been sold that story from Lally that pieces of that cocktail glass was embedded in the rear bumper. Would Lally have gotten a grand jury to go along with this if he stated clearly, we have a piece of glass laying on top of the bumper. We can't connect to anything other than another piece of glass that Proctor magically finds? I'm not sure about that, but we now know Lally has clearly misstated what his evidence showed to the grand jury, to Aunt Bev in pretrial hearings, and now his own experts, which should have given him the reports before trial, they now clearly says it doesn't line up with the facts at Lally. At least it's a misstatement. In the worst case scenario, he was lying purposefully to get a trial going, which would be even more shady in my world. But a lot of technical terms, it was really hard to follow along. It was exhibit this, exhibit that. We didn't see anything on screen. It was really hard to explain. And again, I think this is one of those tactics you use as a DA where you just throw evidence at the jury, hope they will think after saying, well, they showed us all this evidence. Not thinking about they didn't really show us what the evidence was or how it was connected. They just showed you a lot of evidence. They showed you a ton of witnesses. What did the witnesses say? Well, it's been 45 weeks since the case started. Who knows? But I think that the defense did a good job of shining the light on none of it really matched up. And they can always return to that in their closing, as Lally probably will, where he's going to misstate again that the cocktail glass was on the car, and then I hope they object and says clearly not what was testified to. The last witness, and this is when it got spicy, because the more the day went on, I have a very, very strong suspicion that Lally is doing whatever he can to keep Trooper Proctor out of that courtroom. We got Bukahkni on the stand, told us about his glorious service as a crayon eater in the Marines, how he used to be super cop in the VA, he was a great cop, and then he started talking about how he was the supervisor of Michael Proctor. So Michael Proctor wasn't the lead detective. It's kind of like a modern relationship. They didn't like to set a label on it. It was more like a fluid situation. He wasn't the lead. No one really was the lead, but he was the supervisor of Michael Proctor, because then everything Michael Proctor touches, he can kind of testify to, because, well, I was the supervisor. Why don't you want Proctor in the courtroom? At the end of the day yesterday, was speculating maybe we are actually starting to wind down Lally's presentation. You finish Bukahkni, you get the Cellbrite expert in to say the 227 search, well, in Canton, clocks don't work. And then you get the ME in to show you the body with all the injuries and say, this is how we believed he got those injuries. And then you end the case. You don't need 45 extra witnesses talking about nothing. And it seems like he want to keep Proctor out of there. And with Bukahkni's testimony yesterday, I kind of can see why. We never got to the cross, but oh my God, if you haven't watched it, go back and watch Trooper Bukahkni's magical testimony. He was allowed to testify on medical terms. He was so clearly reminded that he had to say abrasion, not lacerations, about the injuries to John's arm. He was talking about What, in your opinion, is an abrasion? It's force provided to an area that ruins the capillary dermis. It was it was so coached. It was so weird for a police officer sitting there talking about the dermis and then the capillary area broken beneath it. I have a hard time believing that's a normal way of him to speak. But with him, we also got the timeline of the day. He was blowing snow in his driveway when he was activated, said, "It's not my job today, it's Proctor." But still, he was called out and did it. And they never went to the crime scene. They went to Jim McCabe's house, which is kind of weird because we have police reports saying that Proctor got John's phone on the crime scene. But now they went to Jen McCabe's house and they isolated people. Remember when people said, no, they talked to us in the same room, and then they start changing and said, no, they talked to us single. Kind of weird again. Then they went down to Dayton to talk to Karen Reed. And when they arrived, they saw this smashed tail light. Didn't think much of it, but called a tow truck, which is a bit suspicious because if you go back, and the defense will probably get to this on cross, Dayton police was already activated and wrote in their report that a tow truck was ordered. Where did they have a legal standing to take control of her vehicle? He talked about they went into the living room, of course, no recordings, no nothing. Talk to Karen. They just wanted to talk. And when they had talked to her for a bit, they said, oh my God. Now we're taking your phone. We're taking your car. And the tow truck have arrived outside. Again, on what legal ground did they order the tow truck before they talked to Karen and made her a suspect? You can't really do that. He never mentioned that Jen told him that Karen clearly stated, I hit him, which should be the legal reason to take control of her vehicle. But why didn't he mention that we saw the car, and because Jennifer McCabe has told us prior to this that Karen had said, I hit him, we impounded the car. Didn't do that. They just all of a sudden in the middle of conversation stood up, said, we're taking your phone, we're taking your car. This is going to be interesting on cross. Then we went to another magic trick he can do. He had X-ray vision because we went to the bar, the McCarthy's bar, where he could see Karen Reed pouring shots into. She got one tall glass with Tito's and soda, I believe, and then he saw her pour 7 more drinks in it. The only problem I had with that was we didn't see that. We saw 1, maybe 2 times she poured a shot glass in the other one. We haven't had the bartender. Probably that bartender will come at some point and testify that it was vodka, but we don't know it so far. But he multiple times stated, oh, here you can see her pour another shot in. And you couldn't see anything because you had John standing here, Karen standing here, and they were just leaning in over the bar. And he claims you could clearly see she was pouring shots in it. And again, no one saw Karen drunk. No one saw anything. And he claimed she had 7 or 8 drinks in a couple of hours. This lady, she's 100 pounds on a good day. Doing 7 shots of Tito's probably would let her have a really good day. But again, he was narrating the video, which we were told in the first day, you're not allowed to, because you couldn't see it on the video. Judge Bev should have admonished Lally and said, don't narrate the videos. Let the videos speak for themselves. But he stopped and said, what, if anything, did you see on the screen? That's not how you should do it, Bev. Remember when you yelled at the defense for doing that in the beginning? But again, everything flies. The last piece was the car in the sally port at the garage. That's another video you have to go watch. You have people disappearing in it. There's no timestamp. Apparently, some other streams than the one I watched did have the timestamp on, where you can see it skips like 30 seconds now and again. You have a guy disappearing through a door without opening it. And you don't see anything. You see the front of the car. The weird thing is, when the car pulls into the garage, there is a perfect outline of a car in snow that's been brushed off. There's snow inside the sally port. Why didn't they prepare that for a car they knew were arriving? After it arrived, they start shoveling snow, which would mean if any evidence fell off that car, they just started shoveling it in the beginning. Bukahkni, he was a good witness because he said all the right things. There will be people on the jury who believe Karen did it after yesterday, or at least be more inclined to believe she did it, because she said all the right things in all the right ways. My only problem is this seems so much like we're covering all the bases so Proctor won't take the stand. And we haven't heard cross of him yet. And that video from the sally port, there was a big commotion because apparently the defense hadn't seen that before. We don't know what sidebars goes on, but Karen turns around, talked to her parents, and said something like, we haven't seen that before, or it's the other way around, or something. There was something wrong there. Cross, hopefully today, Lally will do his Lallyisms because there's no court tomorrow. So if he can waste another 4 hours today and send Bukahkni home without answering Alan Jackson, he will probably try to do that. But hopefully I'll see you all later for another interesting day. Now we're getting to the meat of the case. No more, I knew him back when he was young and wore short pants. Now we're into the meat of it, and I will love to see Alan Jackson attacking Bukahkni, especially if they had microdots to go through the video, if they had the original video now and looking at the timestamps so he can show it again. Why is 10 minutes missing here? Why is 5 seconds missing here? That could be interesting.